Very well, members. We seem to have a challenge with quorum. Those members who are leaving and those who are entering, kindly just get in so that we can get quorum. I will also direct that the bell be rung for 10 minutes so that we can get the necessary quorum to start our business for the day.
There is no quorum. The number required for business to begin is 50 members. And as it stands, that particular number has not been achieved. A quick amendment to an earlier statement. This broadcast is available on YouTube. You can stream it live on YouTube. And you can also watch it on KBC Channel 1 as well as Bunge TV. This morning, another motion, hopefully, if the members will be able to clear the remaining business, there will be a motion which will be moved by the Honourable Member, Honourable Michael Mushira, on prioritizing recruitment of NYS graduates into the disciplined forces. And that aware that National Youth Service, NYS, is a government department established by an Act of Parliament, Cap 208, Laws of Kenya, whose vision is to catalyze transformative youth empowerment in Kenya. Further aware that the twin purpose of NYS are to create a pool of technical, disciplined, and organized human resource to undertake national development programs and to elevate youth unemployment in both formal and informal sectors by providing skills necessary for employment while promoting national cohesion. Now, therefore, this House urges the government through all the disciplined forces to consider giving first priority in recruitment of their servicemen and women to willing NYS graduates with a view to reducing their recruitment course, training period, and subsequently training course, and in addition, creating jobs for the skilled youth. That is a motion which will be moved by the Honourable Member Michael Mushira. Another motion will be moved by the Honourable Member Owen Bayer on to the revival of cashew nuts subsector in Kenya. That this House urges the government to put in place measures to revive the cashew nut industry in the country. The only bill appearing in the order of business this afternoon is the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill number 2 of 2018. That is National Assembly Bill number 5. This particular bill seeks to amend Articles 101, subsection 1 of the Constitution, Article 136, subsection 2A, Article 177, subsection 1A, and Article 180, subsection 1 of the Constitution of Kenya by changing the existing date for the general election for members of Parliament, the President, Member of County Assembly, and the county governors, as well as deputy county governors.
Member for Baringo, that was the member for Baringo, north of which, the one who walked out. Sergeant at Arms, Sergeant at Arms, you must be aware that when the bell is being rung, no members should walk out.
The House is trying to achieve quorum. It is yet to attain the required number of 50. And there you saw the Speaker at least trying to whip members to stay within the chambers to ensure that the House do achieve that quorum, because without that number, the business of the day cannot commence. And respective leadership of the House are at this moment mobilizing their members to come into the chambers so that this House can expedite business before it this morning. the Constitution of Kenya, Amendment Bill number 2, seeks to change the existing date for the general election from 2nd Tuesday of August in every 5th year to 3rd Monday in December every 5th year. This particular bill has been authored by Honorable Member for Kiminini constituency, Honorable Chris Omalwa. The bill seeks to introduce a new date for conducting a general election that will be more favorable to Kenyan circumstances. This is according to the Honorable Member. The amendment is to ensure that the date of election reflects the unique circumstances and tradition of Kenya.
We have the requisite quorum now. We can commence our business for the day.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers. Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, statements. Order number 8, motion, expansion of the school feeding program to all public primary schools.
Very well. The Honorable Vincent Kemose Mogakam. Yes, you have the mic, the Honorable Kemose.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to move the following motion. Aware that Article 53(1)(c) of the Constitution guarantees every child the right to basic nutrition, shelter, and health, cognizant of the fact that primary school-aged children are at a stage where a child requires nutritional meals for health, mental, and physical development, as well as growth. Aware that feeding programs have been implemented in Kenya since the 1980s with varying degrees of success and with heavy reliance on foreign aid and management, noting that the Kenyan government introduced a homegrown school feeding program in the year 2009, a more sustainable and nationally integrated program by the national government-funded school meals program through multi-sectoral cooperation, appreciating that the school feeding program has played an integral part in realizing the country's goal of universal primary education through incentivizing the enrollment and retention of children. Further, noting that the feeding program targets food inequality in the most vulnerable areas of Kenya, including school districts in the arid and semi-arid areas, and the informal urban slums of large cities such as Nairobi and Mombasa. This House urges the government to expand the primary school feeding program to all public primary schools in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, universal access to free and compulsory education is a key tenet of the Kenyan Constitution 2010. Mr. Speaker, Article 53(1)(c) of our Constitution guarantees every child to basic nutrition, shelter, and health care. Mr. Speaker, free primary education was adopted as a state policy in the year 2003. However, that program has gained significance and success in Kenya. Still, the feeding program in the Republic of Kenya, Mr. Speaker, sir, although it's an ongoing project, still faces regional inequalities. Mr. Speaker, children in arid and semi-arid areas are enjoying partly the fruits of this program. However, in some areas, Mr. Speaker, and more particularly where I come from, the Western region, Mr. Speaker, we are not receiving any free, any government-funded free program in terms of meals. Mr. Speaker, the schools in rural areas where children report as early as 8 in the morning, they have to spend several hours, Mr. Speaker, sir, in school, not less than 6 hours in the morning, and then they leave in the afternoon to go to their homes to get lunch meals. Mr. Speaker, in some other areas, in urban areas, for example, the slums, and also in the arid and semi-arid areas, this program, which is known as homegrown feeding program, the government of Kenya, through cooperation of World Food Program, was rolled out in the year 2009. But this program has not been universal. This program has not been rolled out nationally. Mr. Speaker, the program of free primary school meals is not new in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, when you and me grew up, I think you can remember very well. But internally, if you look at it, Mr. Speaker, sir, this program is not felt in some parts of the country. While in some parts of the world, people are really applauding this. You will even find in some days coming, people want to come and benchmark and see how successful this program is. And we wonder where are they going to benchmark? Because this program, Mr. Speaker, has not been felt, more particularly in the rural poor. And that is where we are targeting. That is where our focus is. That if this program is implemented universally, Mr. Speaker, sir, the rural poor, our children in the rural homes will be able to access schools, the enrollment will go high, performance will go high, and by so doing, Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to assure you that we can be able to alleviate poverty in this Republic of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, among the four agendas that the President has set, food security is one of those, is one of the agenda. And I want to, Mr. Speaker, sir, inform you all, submit that if this program is rolled out, then this will go along in solving the food security and also enhancing that agenda of food security. Mr. Speaker, in the Republic of Kenya, various policy documents have come up geared towards implementing this program. One of these policy documents, Mr. Speaker, is the Food and Nutrition Security Strategy and the National Nutrition Action Plan of 2012 to 2017, which highlights the importance of improving nutrition and school feeding program in schools in Kenya, involving both public and private institutions in Kenya. Secondly, there is also, Mr. Speaker, the National School Health Policy 2009, which recommends the provision of balanced school meals in all the schools in Kenya, public primary schools in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, this policy document was developed jointly by the Minister of Education and the Minister of Health, and it's their livelihoods in the long run and strengthening as well as expanding coverage of social protection. Mr. Speaker, further, the Food and Nutrition Security Policy 2011 states it is the policy of the government that all Kenyans throughout their life cycle enjoy at all times safe food in sufficient quality and also quantity, as well as satisfy their nutritional needs for optimal health. Finally, Mr. Speaker, the National Education Sector Plan 2013-2018 identifies homegrown school meals program as the preferred strategy for providing school meals in Kenya, whereby, Mr. Speaker, the local small farmers are encouraged to cultivate, to do farming, and thereafter, Mr. Speaker, sell their produce to the local schools. Mr. Speaker, this particular policy document was aimed at improving the poverty level by providing income to the small-scale farmers in local-based area. Where they come from, they grow food crops, and directly sell them to the local schools, Mr. Speaker. By so doing, the locals will be able to get income as well as provide meals to the school, to the local schools. Mr. Speaker, implementation of this program is a what intervention which will enhance, Mr. Speaker, access to education and also improve enrollment, particularly in our local or rural schools. Mr. Speaker, this program will definitely motivate children to attend school, more particularly at an early age of attending school. Mr. Speaker, this program we've successfully enrolled throughout the Republic of Kenya. I want to assure you, Mr. Speaker, that the rate of school dropouts will be minimal. Mr. Speaker, where I come from, and if I talk particularly of my constituency and the other constituencies, Mr. Speaker, I can inform you without hesitation that no even one school that is benefiting from this program. Mr. Speaker, it's high time that the government of Kenya takes over and ensures that this program is enrolled or is enhanced throughout the Republic of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, on the designation of 10th June 2017, which has highlighted how World Food Program intends to conclude its program, clearly quotes the Cabinet Secretary, Mr. Matiang'i, who was the then Education Minister, Education Cabinet Secretary on 10th in May 2017, when he said that it has come to a time when our children must be fed by us. He further said that the government cannot continue to rely on outsiders to feed our children. Mr. Speaker, that statement coming from the government of Kenya, then that means the government of Kenya is ready to enhance and roll out this program throughout the Republic of Kenya. However, Mr. Speaker, the time limit for this particular program to be universally and nationally enrolled was by January 2018. Mr. Speaker, up to date, some of the schools, and more particularly in the
account of this being probably your first time to move this kind of motion, I will allow you a minute or two so that you can move your motion. Yeah, you according to our rules, you have, to our orders, you only had 15 minutes. So you should have timed yourself. But kindly move in the next 2 minutes so that we can make progress.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, I want to urge this House, Mr. Speaker, to adopt this motion. I also want to request the Committee of Implementation that once this motion is passed by this Honorable House, that they ensure that its implementation is done as quick as possible so that the children of this country can enjoy the fruits of this motion. Mr. Speaker, I wish to move this motion, and I want to request my colleague, Honorable Manso, to second them.
Very well, the Honorable Manzo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving an opportunity to second this important motion. Mr. Speaker, I would like to inform the House that this feeding program has been going on in some parts of Kenya, including my constituency, Makueni. And I want to say it has been useful, but has not been uniform across the country. Even within the semi-arid areas, and even within Makueni, not every school benefits. And the manner in which the government identifies the schools to give the food, the feeding program, the school feeding program, the manner in which they are identified is not even consultative, and therefore there is a need to expand such that the feeding program goes to all schools. And in fact, if it is in every single primary school, public school, whether boarding or not, then it is one sure way of making sure a child in the country has a meal a day, even when there is a famine or when there is no famine. Because at any one's given time, you cannot really establish which area has sufficient food and which one has not. And I also want to thank the partners, like World Food Program, headed by the Honorable Bissell, a former governor of Southern Carolina, now based in Rome as the director of this program. He's been making a huge effort all over the world for people to make donations in terms of food so that we can make sure that there's no child in the world who perishes of hunger. There are ways in which they work through the country. They work through the Ministry of Devolution. They work through the Ministry of Education. The question is, should this be domiciled in the Ministry of Education, or should we allow the World Food Program and other non-state actors to implement this particular program? Because its biggest challenge has been implementation. And if it is within the schools, and every primary school has access to this school feeding program, which method then will we apply so that we make sure every school has a food? It is mostly either for lunch, and it's a balanced diet, Mr. Speaker, or whatever they provide, so that the children can have a full meal at least once while in school. And we avoid, even for those children who walk home for lunch to have a meal, some will not find a meal, and they will walk back without a meal. There will be no accountability to that, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, we need to come up with a method such that we are clear that this is fulfilled as it is a requirement under the Constitution of Kenya, Article 53(1)(c), and also that it is fair. There's fair distribution in the country, and that all children benefit from this program, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, there has been an effort in the country to feed children at school, but it has not been well coordinated. We've had floods, and even places dominantly with a lot of food were adversely affected by these floods, and even most of the food, most of the harvest is not going to be as it's the usual. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I would really want to urge members to support this motion. It is an important motion. It affects each one and every one of us. Every village in this country a child. Then we have fed a nation. The moment we make sure that there is a school feeding program, then for sure a child will look forward to go to school and probably have a meal when they know very well they may not have a meal at home. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to really thank the Honorable Vincent Kemosi for having brought this very important motion, which, Mr. Speaker, I beg to second.
Well, members, I will propose the question. That aware that Article 53(1)(c) of the Constitution guarantees every child the right to basic nutrition, shelter, and health, cognizant of the fact that primary school-age children are at a stage where a child requires nutritional meals for healthy mental and physical development and growth, aware that school feeding programs have been implemented in Kenya since the 1980s with varying degrees of success and with heavy reliance on foreign aid and management. Noting that the Kenyan government introduced a homegrown school feeding program, HGSFP, in 2009, a more sustainable and nationally integrated program by the national government-funded school meals program through multi-sectoral cooperation, appreciating that the school feeding program has played an integral part in realizing the country's goal of universal primary education through incentivizing the enrollment and retention of children, further noting that the feeding program targets food inequality in the most vulnerable areas of Kenya, including school districts in the arid and semi-arid areas and the informal urban slums of large cities such as Nairobi and Mombasa. This House urges the government to expand the primary school feeding program to all public primary schools in the country. I will give the first opportunity on this to the Honorable Iringo Kubai, member for Igembe Central.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this motion. And on the same token, Mr. Speaker, let me thank and congratulate Vincent Kemosi, MP, for having brought the same. Mr. Speaker, as I stand to support the motion, noting that education is a basic need for our children and for everybody in this country, and equally, food or nutrition is also is a basic need to each and every human being, and therefore we should support the motion so that our children, as they go to school, they also need to have healthy bodies. They should be fed well so that at least they can concentrate and achieve what we take them to learn in schools, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the feeding programs in this country has been there for quite a while, and most of us have grown having seen it. Initially, it was sent to be a school feeding program, and but unfortunately, it has not taken off, or it has never taken off to the extent that it encompasses or it takes into account each and every child of this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is very well known to most of all of us here that not all families can afford 3 meals a day. Not all families can get breakfast, lunch, and supper on the table in their houses, Mr. Speaker. And this one becomes a big burden to those poor families, whereby children fall out from school or they don't go to school because they didn't take any breakfast. You find that when a child leaves the home without having taken any breakfast, when he or she is in the class, is shivering there, and the others who want some breakfast are concentrating in their classwork, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this brings the disparities we have in education. This is why we find that public schools are not performing as well as the private schools. Private schools, or the academies as they are so called, they have children who go there. Their parents have got the means. They pay for their food, their accommodation, and everything. But in the public schools, we have poor infrastructure, few teachers, and more so, students don't get any food. Mr. Speaker, during the...
for giving me the opportunity to support this motion. Mr. Speaker, when we look at...
The Honorable Gikaria, just before you proceed, the Honorable Gikaria, the Honorable Professor has been sitting here with you throughout from the time we started. I know you have... well, the second bell was being rung. We only come from the time we started. She was there. We'll give you an opportunity also. Don't worry. Don't worry about Professor. Proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I know at the risk of losing 1 minute, I'd like to confirm to the honorable member that not only was I here when the second bell was being rung, but I was actually here way before the bell rang. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the world over, we are aware that education is an equalizer. And Mr. Speaker, we all know that when we seek to determine the future of our country and to ensure that we would like to be committed to all those programs that we have, we look at education. Mr. Speaker, I therefore would want to support this motion because we also know that if we want to determine where a country is going, we just need to look at the children, and much more importantly, we need to look at the programs, and particularly the way that we are seeking to arrange to provide for education. When we consider, Mr. Speaker, the kinds of programs that we already have, we will see that by and large, we not only have programs that deal with developing the intellect of the students, Mr. Speaker, we now increasingly have programs as a result of the HIV scourge and as a result of many other challenges. Very many children are not only living in contexts where they are in poverty, but we have children who are being brought up by their grandmothers, being brought up by parents who really are not able to meet their needs. And therefore, as I support this motion, Mr. Speaker, I would also like to urge that we ensure that in its implementation, we not only seek and confirm that it is a good program and remember what happened in the past, but that we ensure that the policy is backed with sufficient budget allocation for its implementation. We recall, Mr. Speaker, that in our country, we have a lot of programs, the Orphans and Vulnerable Children's Program, we have the elderly, the persons of disability program, and now in our current program, Mr. Speaker, we are going to talk about universal health program that will be in 12 countries. As I support this motion, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to urge that we do not become a country that will come up with very good programs that will indeed articulate and ensure that we can confirm the foundation and the reason why we need to have them, but also a country that will ensure that there is adequate financial allocation and monitoring. With this, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to support the motion and thank the member because this is an extremely important aspect that we would like to address. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well, Professor. The Honorable Njoroge wa Maua, member for Maragua.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this chance to contribute to the motion as I support and commend the mover. Mr. Speaker, it's good that today, as we discuss the issue of the food program, we have the beneficiaries with us so that they know whenever we come here, we are looking at the plight and also the plight of the other citizens generally. Mr. Speaker, as much as the mover talked about this motion, it is true that the moment we urge the government to push to the feeding program to the public primary schools that we have, very true, we are going to boost a lot of enrollment in the schools. Mr. Speaker, some of the children, when they feel that they will stay at home and there is no food there, and there is food in school, they will see the reason to be there. Mr. Speaker, also this one will hold the children at school, and we are going to eliminate even the truancy that usually occur in schools during lunch hour and in the afternoon when they feel that they are hungry and they cannot be able to continue to listening to their teachers in the afternoon lessons. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a motion that really needs to be implemented, and the reason to why we are urging the government to implement this. Mr. Speaker, when you look at the semi-arid areas and arid areas, and especially in the rural areas, you'll find that many of our young children, due to lack of getting enough food at home, they are malnutritioned. And the moment we urge and this one's take shape, it means that we'll improve the nutrition levels of our children, and we are even going to fight some of the malnutrition-related diseases, Mr. Speaker. And because we are coming up with the universal health for all, this one is also going to boost their health because much of what will be eaten at the school will be looked to make sure that it has a balanced diet in itself. So, Mr. Speaker, leave alone the issue of even improving the health, but also look at the issue of the productivity when it comes to the syllabus coverage, meaning that the teacher will be able to capture the concentration of these children, because in the afternoon, Most of the time when our stomachs are empty or when the stomachs of the children are empty, you may find that the children are not moving with the teacher as the teacher tries to cover the syllabus. Mr. Speaker, this is also going to create some employment because in those schools, whoever will be cooking are some of the members who have maybe concluded on their schools, or even our mothers and other members of the public who will be employed as cooks to make sure that by lunch hour the food is ready. So in itself, we are going to create employment, and these are some of the citizens who will be able to put food on the tables at their home. Mr. Speaker, we are also going to improve on the production of the food crops in the local areas, because mostly what the farmers will produce will be easily bought by the schools so that they can be able to give enough of this. So, Mr. Speaker, in itself, we are also going to zero in the child labor, because most of the time you find that since these children are not going to school because there is nothing to eat, they are the same ones you find parents being accompanied, and they also assist them in trying to get something at home. So we are also going to zero in the child labor, and in itself, we are building on the locals, and this one is going to help. So, Mr. Speaker, I fully support the motion and request that the implementation committee will be able to move and push the government to have the compulsory feeding program done in all the public primary schools. Thank you.
The member for Budalangi, the Honorable Sauti.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also want to take this earliest opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to congratulate the Honorable Vincent Kemosi Mogaka for bringing up this motion. Mr. Speaker, this motion has come at the right time, especially the beneficiaries of this motion when they are in the House as we are talking. I want to take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, also to thank my Honorable Women Rep for Busia County, Honorable Florence Mutua, actually for making effort to enable the pupils from Bubamba Primary School and Rugunga Primary School to be in this house as we are talking. The Speaker, I am, and I want to remember that I was a beneficiary of Moi Milk Program. It came when I was just in class 4. And indeed, that's the thing that helped some of us to be kept in school. Mr. Speaker, when we are talking, when I'm telling you that I thank the women rep to have enabled these pupils from Mubamba Primary School. Mubamba Primary School is in the swamp, and that swamp comprises 17,000 hectares of land, and it's all under marsh. Movement there is not easy, but she has managed to bring them up to Nairobi. Mr. Speaker, for them, it is as if they have reached heaven. This is heaven for them, because I know most of members of parliament here do not know Kenya. Do not know Kenya, because from Nairobi, you simply go to your constituencies. And some of your constituencies are just near Nairobi, or even if they are not near Nairobi, they are possibly exposed, developed, and so on. Yes, that does not mean that Budalangi is not developed. Budalangi is developed, but part of it is under the swamp. And that is where you will find the two schools that are here. One is Rugunga Primary School, and the other one is Bubamba Primary School. Mr. Speaker, the feeding program is the only thing that do help to keep Bubamba and Rugunga Primary School going children in school. Because of the topography, the landscape, and the way they live in the swamp in Budalangi. Even the little relief that people of Budalangi are given, we have always to make sure we give these schools for them to be kept in the school. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, this motion has come at the right time when the beneficiaries are actually listening, when members of parliament are articulating for their plights so that they can benefit and be kept in school. This is a program, Mr. Speaker, under this law, and I am happy that the honorable member has even quoted the article. We need this Kenya human rights to agitate for the rights of Kenya that are enshrined in the Constitution, so that the government takes responsibility to ensure that the pupils in Ubamba school eat lunch, breakfast, and supper. Without that, then these other people will be left behind. And Mr. Speaker, it is only the education that can give equal opportunities to all Kenyans. Once you deny people education, then you have also denied them opportunities amongst other Kenyans. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, what is going to stabilize this country is for us as a house to agitate for the rights of all Kenyans to access clean water, which is never accessed in Bubamba, to access food that is edible, not just any other food. So that, Mr. Speaker, these people in those places, or the pupils, can also stay in schools and be able to learn like any other pupils in other places. I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. I know my time is up.
Very well spoken, the Honorable Member for Budalangi. We shall now have the Honorable Gikaria, Member for Nakuru Town East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. And to also thank you for recognizing the primary schools who are seated in Parliament, and for them to confirm whether they also are beneficiaries of this feeding program. You know, Mr. Speaker, as I was looking at the motion, and I want to agree with the Honourable Member, Mheshimiwa Vincent Mogaka, on matters, because at first it was meant for arid and semi-arid areas. But I want to now to appreciate the fact that he has forgotten a few other urban areas, just included Nairobi and Mombasa. We have so many, like I come from a county that has, Nakuru County, that is we have just been given some city status, and we have a lot of slums. And I think that is the biggest problem that we are having in urban areas. Mr. Speaker, I was just trying to confirm from the County Director of Education. And in Nakuru, actually, this program is not there. But again, it's only that it was meant to have started for purposes of the arid and semi-arid. But I think the inclusion of urban areas, particularly people coming from the slums where the parents, is not just that in arid areas and semi-arid there is no adequate food, but also in urban areas where we assume there is adequate food. So many families cannot be able to take their children through school because of this. And I'm saying this, Honorable Speaker, is that even in my constituency or the Nakuru County in itself, you'll find so many kids carrying food because the parents don't have money to be able to pay. And by the time they are taking their food, it is either very cold or it is because of, after so many hours, it's not of any use to them. So, Mr. Speaker, I think this program, as initiated by the ministry, and of course it didn't just start yesterday, it started a long time ago, in the 1980s, where we used to have the so-called milk by the former President Moi. I was actually telling the mover that he's not a beneficiary of that milk. I don't think he was in primary school by then, but again, that is subject to. But I just want to confirm, Chair, is that when this program started, it is started for a purpose. But Chair, Honorable Speaker, it failed because one, when they think you're dealing with the government, the cost went high, accountability was not even there, So many people would be taking this milk back to their homes, or even unpacking and selling, you know, in the villages. The lack of firewood, for example, Mr. Speaker, to be able to cook in these schools, or even salaries for the cooks, for them to be able to cook. So these are some of the issues that we really need, as Parliament, we really need to check and be able to, as we are asking the implementation committee to take up the matter upon, say, if it is going to be resolved that this motion goes through, then again it is important for us also as Parliament to consider the budgetary provisions that will be given for this purpose. Because it is one thing to bring a motion, and then, because, Mr. Speaker, I'm trying to look at the just concluded budget that we have just concluded. And the capitation that is given to the primary schools and the secondary schools for free primary education, and that element of school feeding program, it is very little, Mr. Speaker. I mean, the government cannot be able, and I want to totally agree with the Minister of Agriculture. What they need to do is that for the schools that have big land, they need to support farms within those land. They need to support irrigation issues within those schools so that those schools can be able to be self-sustaining. So it is one thing, Mr. Speaker, to bring a motion, but there is also another thing for us to be able to have enough budgets for this. Of course, I totally agree that keeping kids in school when they feed in school, it is something that does. But I'll tell you, Mr. Speaker, I do help so many primary kids to pay for their feeding program in primary schools. So it is important for us to be able to have some budgets for us to be able to sustain this program. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support.
The Honorable Gikaria, you seem to doubt that the mover of this motion benefited from the Nyayo milk scheme. But he's on record as saying that he benefited. I don't know why you doubt him. We will choose to believe him. We'll have the Honorable Watch Tom, a member for Mathare, to speak from Nairobi County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and allow me to thank the Member of Parliament who brought this motion. This is a very important motion. Mr. Speaker, in spite of our Constitution 2010 providing for the questions of discrimination, we are still very largely an unequal society, and I want to agree with the member who has said before here that education is one of those things that would make us or would act as an equalizer, and in particular the question of school feeding program would be able to keep our children in school. I also want to join the member who has just spoken before me, who has said that these ought to be applied equally across the nation so that our children are able to spend time in school rather than spending time walking distances. For example, in my constituency in Mathare, a lot of the parents there live on less than $1 a day. And if children were to be able to have to spend an hour, 30 minutes, or 45 minutes in order to go back to school, to their houses to try to get food, it would take a lot of time and their concentration in school. Mr. Speaker, universal health or health is one of the big four agenda of the government today. And one of the questions we need to ask ourselves is how much has been dedicated on this budget to school feeding program. We have a budget of close to, I think, 1.7 billion on the allocation or on the votes on health itself. How much of this are we putting on the food feeding program? So I want to agree that if we haven't placed any allocation in this particular budget that we've made, certainly the Budget and Appropriation Committee, the Implementation Committee, should look at how this can be able to be factored in. So I want to allow the Member of Parliament who has brought this motion and ask that this motion should not only die at being a motion and should go to the next step in which we will be able to ensure that our children are able to go to school. So with those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I want to support and congratulate the Member of Parliament who has raised this motion. Thank you.
Very well. We shall have the Honorable Obo Mohammed, member for Lamu.
Shule sahihi zimefungwa kwa sababu ya mambo ya kutokuwa na usalama. wanafunzi wanapata shida kwa sababu asubuhi mwanzo wakiamka paka waende watafute maji ndio waje walete kwa nyumba zao, ili hiyo maji ndio itengenezewe lunch, akitoka lunch ndio apate, au ndio dinner, au ndio chakula cha usiku. So mpango huu utasaidia sana. Mimi nikitoa ushuhuda, mimi ni mmoja wa maziwa ya Nyayo na tuliyafurahia sana. Tuliyafurahia na matokeo yake yalionekana. So mpango huu ukifanyika utasaidia sana wanafunzi, na sehemu watu wakisema au wabunge wakisema kaunti zote au kila Mkenya afaa kuwa sawa na Mkenya mwingine, bado tuna sehemu kama Lamu bado hatujakuwa sawa na wengine. Wajua wale wanasema hivi, labda wanakaa wakiangalia Nairobi na kaunti zingine, wanafaa Lamu wakienda wasiende Amu, waende Lamu county watembee. Wajua wengi wakija Lamu town wanaona Lamu ni tofauti, pengine watu wanajiweza. Kuna sehemu kama Basuba, kuna sehemu Kiunga kuna matatizo mengi. Wanafunzi inabidi wanaenda kwa hizi kambi za majeshi au za askari ili wakajipatie vyakula ndio wapate kupeleka hata nyumbani. Lakini mpango huu ukiwekwa kwa mashule, wale wanafunzi hawataenda kutafuta hizo chakula. So mpango huu ni mzuri sana na tunaomba uwekewe mkazo uweze kusaidia wanafunzi wetu kwa mashule. Pia mpango huu utasababisha wale ambao wanaona shida kwenda kusoma kwa sababu ya njaa watakuja kwa wengi. Mimi nina hakika mpango huu ukifanywa hata baada ya miezi mitatu zile shule zitajaa wanafunzi. Maana paka sasa Lamu kuna sehemu si wanafunzi wengi wanaenda kusoma. Hata paka kama wale ukihesabu wale wametoka primary shule ya msingi tu shule ya upili, utaona kuna gap kubwa. Tunapambana kama viongozi lakini matatizo bado yako, na ni ule mgao wa Lamu huwa ni kidogo, hauwezi kutusaidia. So tafadhali wabunge mkizungumza, wengine sisi matumbo inatuuma mkisema ati Wakenya wengine wawe ni sawa na wengine, haijakuwa sawa. Tembeeni, naomba mtembee muone sehemu kuna watu bado wanasoma chini ya miti, kuna watu kama nilivyotangulia kusema shule zimefungwa, tunabeba kwa ndege kwenda kupelekwa kwa boarding school ili apate kusoma. Kwa hivyo mpangilio huu na usupport sana, na naomba wenzangu wa usupport, ni mpangilio wa maana sana. Asante.
The Honorable Munyenyi, I heard your loud voice out when she was saying that she enjoyed the Nyayo milk scheme, but I doubt that you enjoyed that milk yourself. But we shall have the Honorable Muli Fabian, member for Kangundo. Not you, not yet. The Honorable member for Kangundo will speak first.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving this opportunity to raise and support this important motion. Mr. Speaker, also I'll appreciate the Honorable Vincent Mugaka for bringing this important motion for our children. Honorable Speaker, our feeding program is one of Millennium Goals, which are very, very important, especially to our kids. Due to, Mr. Speaker, because of climate change, there are areas like some coffee zone, like Kangundo, where I come from, our produce, farmers produce nothing, and the market also is very poor. So we are not able to have enough stock to feed our kids. Also, cotton zone, tea zone, they are all affected by climate change. Mr. Speaker, not only people living in rural areas, there are also people living in urban areas who are affected on economical challenges, especially in towns we have many slums, which many kids they have not been in school because of lack of food. Mr. Speaker, the government now is talking about Agenda 4. If today you want to make this country proceed further in terms of progressive development, we must give our kids proper education. Proper education will involve the involvement of restructuring the old structure house made by the Minister of Education. Our kids are not attending classes. Our kids are having a lot of desperation because of food in classes, so we end up losing attendance on terms of concentration in the classes. So, Honorable Speaker, I heard this House. This is a very, very important motion, especially right now we are talking about education. It is very important to give our kids the best price in terms of being classes. Honorable Speaker, not only talking about the education, the country we are having challenges in terms of equity distribution of resources. In this motion, there are some areas which are benefiting this feeding program, and there are some areas which have never received this program. Honorable Speaker, I will bring to this out that every part of this country represented in terms of county government, in terms of national government. Some areas are getting a lot of benefit on a contest that they are marginalized. Mr. Speaker, the distribution of resources in the county government, we are getting the same equal share. Considering we are getting equal share, so this contest of people by the term of marginalized, we don't want to hear in terms of distribution of resources. So I urge the people who are bringing the diagram of marginalized, we are all in that country and we are all marginalized. So we need equal distribution of resources. Mr. Speaker, also, I'll hand the Committee of Implementation. We are having too many important motions which have passed through this House. And even last week, I was going again to bring another motion which was passed 2016, and the implementation has never been implemented. So I had the Committee of Implementation. Some of these important motions we are passing. We just look like a house of passing laws which are never being implemented. So we urge it to move ahead, spearhead this motion when it passed, to go to the Minister of Education. If they don't have a budget, we can pass the budget. We are fathers, we are parents, which need to take care of the kids. Where we come from, our people are suffering. So if it's a budget, we need to come to this House, Mr. Speaker. I urge them to bring the budget that we pass for the benefit of the kids. And Mr. Speaker, in those few remarks, I support the motion. Thank you.
The Committee of Implementation, I think you've heard the plea of the member that you should take action on this. The Honorable Ashira Kabinga, member from where?
Thank you, Ms. By focusing on some of the historically marginalized areas and pumping in probably, and I do appreciate that some of those areas require much more attention, but even as we do so, we should not forget that some of the other parts in the country also require some of these services and facilities, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the school feeding program in my time was referred to as SUPRO. I don't know what that meant that time, but it did keep us into school. It did maintain us in school, and especially in areas that are vulnerable, Mr. Speaker, and I have my constituency in mind, where largely we do grow rice, and there is an attempt to have child labor. So by having school feeding programs, where children are maintained in schools. As it is now, Mr. Speaker, a number of our schools are reporting high rates of absenteeism simply because children get into farms in their attempt to get food, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, nutrition is vital for our children to even enhance their cognitive abilities. And you realize that in most of the areas that we come from, Mr. Speaker, especially settlement areas like in Mwea, where farmers do not have any farm to do farming other than lice in the fields, when they get back into the settlement schemes, they have no space to grow anything that can add to the nutrition, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, having nutrition supplements in school would add a lot to these children, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, it is important that even as the government focuses on the ESO areas, to also come up with programs that will enhance school feeding programs in the rest of the country, Mr. Speaker. And I think it is possible for the government to be innovative in its support for this program, Mr. Speaker. We still have schools that have large areas or large acres or many acres that go unutilized, Mr. Speaker. And if this can be blended with the many youth that are out there with no jobs, be allowed to farm in those areas, and then they say they can sell to the schools in a rather subsidized manner. Mr. Speaker, we also have things like greenhouses. The government can support most of these schools to have greenhouses that can allow them to grow vegetables and other things that would enhance nutrition, so that children in some of these rather marginalized areas or rather poor areas like where I come from may enjoy a meal just like any other person who is out there in a richer family. Mr. Speaker, if you visit these children during lunch hour, especially where they carry food, where they carry food, you notice some young children who would go to the field when others are eating, simply because they didn't carry anything, because their families could not afford any meal for them as they go to school. And therefore, this school feeding program would bring some equity to the children and therefore give them some opportunity to compete with others in school. I support this motion, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Tinde Mwale.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the motion. Mr. Speaker, the motion will enhance the fundamental rights of the children as enshrined under Article 53, subsection 1, B and C. This motion, Mr. Speaker, is going to make sure that the children get adequate health care and education. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, my main concern will be on the management of the free feeding program, because we have had such programs before, which were being sponsored by the government of President Moi, but it was a letdown because of mismanagement. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, as I rise up, I want to suggest or kind of ask members, especially the move of the motion, to consider putting this free feeding program under the National Government CDF Constituency Fund Act 2015 as a project, just like any other project, Mr. Speaker, because when you look at the management of the feeding program, the government will have the government is going to have a challenge, especially in identification of schools and the number of students to be fed. And since the members of parliament have got a direct link, Mr. Speaker, and have got the correct network on the ground, it's my suggestion that we have the feeding program as a CDF project, whereby the CDF committee is able to implement the program as it's stipulated by the national government. Mr. Speaker, you will realize that nutritional effects on students are very rampant, especially in the rural setting. Students or pupils who don't have food will obviously have a problem in thinking, behavior, health, and factors that impact on academic performance. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, as I rise up, I want to ask the government to consider putting up this free feeding program, so as to enhance the good health of our students and also enhance performance in our schools. Mr. Speaker, if this motion is considered, discussion regarding poor performance in this house will be a thing of the past, and we are going to experience a free level of competition when it comes to performing in schools. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this motion, and with those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support the motion.
Very well. The Honorable Gitau Wairimo, member for Nyandarua.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to support this motion, and I really want to thank Honorable Vincent Kemosi Mogaka for bringing this important motion. Honorable Speaker, it is quite disturbing to note that most students, especially where I come from, in Nyandarua, go to school hungry. I just want to correct the mover of this motion that it is not only schools in ASO areas. There are schools elsewhere with very poor students with no food, that go to school with no food at all. And especially in Nyandarua, we have very dry areas where parents of these students are quite really very Honorable Speaker, next time there is no money. I know it can go a long way. Honorable Speaker, I would also want to suggest to schools, as we start off this feeding program, we should also encourage our schools to start off.
Would be interested actually in speaking to this. I have 37 interests on the board here. So we will give fairly and try to distribute it across the country as much as possible. So members, just take it in good stead. We'll proceed. The Honorable Faith.
Thank you very much. Honorable Speaker, you find that it is good to give these children food during lunchtime. But I also would want to suggest that we introduce a take-home portion, because sometimes this is considered. So I'm putting this across to the mover of the motion that he should also include this. And the issue of irrigation should be stressed, because when we do irrigation in schools, or we start correct.
The Honorable Member for Nyandarua is only 5 minutes, and there's a lot of interest in this. I will give this opportunity to the Honorable Danita Gatti.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me 1 minute to join my people of Migori County, Mr. Speaker, in mourning my beloved Senator, Senator Ben Oluochokelo, who passed on yesterday. Mr. Speaker, I hope you'll give me a bit of time, because, Mr. Speaker, my Senator, Ben Oluochokelo, has succumbed to cancer, Mr. Speaker, just 1 year after his election. Mr. Speaker, I remember I served the county of Migori as the women representative in the last parliament. And Mr. Speaker, Senator Ben Oluochokelo, who was in the media by that time, Mr. Speaker, really played a very big part in terms of highlighting the work that I did and that I do for the people of the county of Migori. Mr. Speaker, many people are not aware that I'm also a journalist by training. And Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the journalists in this country, and including KJ, the member for Dagoretti South. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the media fraternity, Mr. Speaker, I want to pass my condolences to the people of the county of Migori, and Mr. Speaker, to tell the people to hold on, Mr. Speaker, and put aside politics as we mourn this moment. Mr. Speaker, the body of my free milk, Mr. Speaker, to children who go to school, and many other counties, Mr. Speaker, I've seen this going on. But Mr. Speaker, the issue of free food to children, especially children who come from very far distances to schools, Mr. Speaker. I remember when I was growing up, Mr. Speaker, I grew up in rural Maeta in Kuria, Mr. Speaker. Kuria East constituency of the county of Migori. And Mr. Speaker, I would walk from school almost 10 kilometers because I was in a day school. Going to school, Mr. Speaker, and going back home for lunch. Mr. Speaker, children with disability and who obviously go to schools in rural settings and even urban settlements, Mr. Speaker, have this challenge. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I wish to challenge and support actually the Honorable Vincent Kemosi Mogaka for bringing this motion to this House. Mr. Speaker, the Member of Parliament, Vincent Mogaka, has spoken for almost everybody in this House, Mr. Speaker. Energy and a lot of their effort, Mr. Speaker, walking all the way to school, Mr. Speaker. This interrupts their education. This makes them tired. Definitely, Mr. Speaker, this is a program that is going to address the issue of malnourishment. Even children who do not get enough food, for example, Mr. Speaker, in their houses are able to have enough food and to concentrate in their education in school and complete school. Mr. Speaker, this motion is in line with our Constitution. The right, chapter 4. Mr. Speaker, the right of children is very well enshrined in the Constitution of this country. So, Mr. Speaker, we are not talking out of the ordinary. This is a support, Mr. Speaker, that I am sure.
Very well. The Honorable Chepkoni Katambi, Member for Njoro.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this important motion. Mr. Speaker, being a member of parliament from Joro constituency, I take it as a very serious and important program. Mr. Speaker, sir, as I stand here, Joro constituency is the most affected, and what I'll be confirming here is, Mr. Speaker, climate change is already here. It has affected us. The destruction of forests, it has also made the rivers dry up. There is no water. Parents and the children are struggling day and night looking for water. The poor children cannot have food because also the food security has been interfered. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, as I stand here, I'm supporting this motion and also saying the motion cannot only target the arid and the semi-arid areas. Like Joro constituency, children are not going to school. This is the constituency which has been previously affected by the former clashes. Therefore, majority of the parents are very poor. We have a lot of slums. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I've tried many times going to the Minister of Education, talking about this issue, and I'm very happy that our colleague member of parliament has brought it here. And what we should be saying today, Mr. Speaker, it is this matter must be taken seriously, and it must be implemented, and that it must benefit every child in this school. Mr. Speaker, sir, we cannot tell one another that we are promoting education if some children are not getting fairness in their respective areas. Mr. Speaker, if you came in a place called Maunarok Joro constituency, you will be shocked. My constituency has become news in the country because of the way the children are affected. Instead of children waking up going to school, they don't go to school. They accompany their parent to go looking for a few coins, which can assist them to get food. Therefore, what I think we can do the most best today for this country, it is to make sure that such motions are seriously supported, and also the government to make sure they are implemented. And I will be proposing, Mr. Speaker, sir, that if this program is really to be well implemented, it should be constituted in the CDF, because we are in a better position to know the most affected schools and the most affected areas. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I'm just rising to support it because I know Joro constituency has really been affected. Children are not going to school because of the poverty, and this is the time we supported it. Mr. Speaker, I don't want to talk so much, but still I'll be saying, as we talk about feeding programs, this is the high time also the government made sure that every family access water. Water has become a burden to women and children. Water has made girl child not even to go to schools. Therefore, let us also push and say the government must implement and ensure that everyone must access water, and our children must be fed. And they.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. for giving me the opportunity to also add my voice to this important motion. And I want to congratulate my colleague Kemosi and all of us who have contributed ahead of me. Mr. Speaker, the concept of education and its ability to change people's lives cannot be overemphasized. Some of us, as we stand on this floor today, it is purely courtesy of education that we have transformed ourselves into who we are today. I join my colleagues who are actually testifying that the milk that the former president, Daniel Arap Moi, brought to schools when we were there at primary school actually made a great difference in the lives of the children. And it was sad as I watched that program collapsed, because I know what it did to me, and there are many other children who were in my class, and I wished it continued to help the other children of Kenya. However, we appreciate the efforts that have been done. But Mr. Speaker, allow me to say that much as we are talking about the primary school and the program feeding, and the program was initially intended to help the ASAL areas, I would like to support this motion that we do the feeding program in all the schools. Because one, in the light of global warming and environmental changes that we have witnessed world over, many places in Kenya which were considered agriculturally rich, self-containing, and able to support their populations have actually turned into ASALs. And this, the update has not been done to date. And therefore, many schools, even those that were once in areas that could help their own children, are no longer able to do so. We have witnessed serious droughts that are killing animals all over. We have witnessed serious rains that are sweeping over our country and destroying fields of agriculture and everything. And therefore, many, many schools, especially in the rural setting. As I stand here, I'm representing Migori County. And Migori County is by and large a rural setting. If you go to a school like Gotorango in Nyatike, you'll find that it is a school that is in the middle of a total desert. And children have to walk long, long distances to go to this school. If you consider a child walks in the morning, maybe 5, 10 kilometers, 7, then walks again at lunchtime and back to school and back home, this is a very tired brain by the end of the day. Time wastage, energy lost, and these children cannot just perform. It is important if the government would make sure that the food is available at school for these children. Looking at the concept of free secondary school education that we are implementing now as a government, we are advocating for 100% transition from primary to secondary. But this statistic may only be talking about those who are already in school. But because of this idea of some families not able to send their children to school due to lack of food, because the children are hungry and weak, we will not have all the children of Kenya actually benefit from the so-called free basic education. It is therefore, in my view, that we make sure that each and every child born in Kenya, whether by design or coincidence, goes to school. And that can only be done when we avail the food in school. Thirdly, I wanted to support by saying that when we are talking about food, to me it is not just food, it is health and nutrition. And so I would recommend that even as we think about feeding children in primary school, we should also be aware of the fact that quite a number of children who are undergoing primary education now, some of them were born HIV positive. And therefore, I would recommend that even as we think about feeding them, such health foods like probiotic yogurts and other fermented foods that can actually boost the immune system be introduced in these schools so that our children can actually go to school well and healthy. Mr. Speaker, I stand to support that bill, that motion, and I would wish to see it done.
The Honorable Warrior saying, I heard you say that some children are born by coincidence. I thought all children are born by the design of the Lord. The Honorable Tomb, you have an opportunity now. Yeah, give her the mic. The Honorable Amunyenye, yes, you are right. I think if our women MPs speak, then all of us have spoken. The Honorable Tomb, proceed.
The next one? Oh, yeah. Mr. Speaker, I stand to support a motion. When we attained independence in 1963, we said we are going to fight three things: poverty, disease, and ignorance. We know that education is an equalizer. There are children who come from semi-arid areas. There are children who come from slums in Kenya. And there are children who come from nomadic families who move from one place to another. So I support this program because we want to attain universal health, because that is what we talk about in agenda for lunch. So I support this program, and let all our children be fed in schools. And it is not a matter of being fed, Mr. Speaker. Let them be given balanced diet. Let them be given food which contains carbohydrates, protein, and vitamins. We don't want them to be given ugali and sukuma wiki. We don't want them to be given what they eat at home. We want.
World Bank said that our feeding program is a targeted social safety net that provides both educational and health benefit to vulnerable children. Honorable Speaker, that definition alone tells us that this program is very important because it's a right for, Honorable Speaker, some parents have 6 or 5 or 10 children, and the burden of the school fee, the burden of feeding them, the burden of clothing them, Honorable Speaker, made some parents to retain some children at home. And that's why, Honorable Speaker, we were saying we need to have this program in our institution. It also fights the malnutrition among the school-going students. Honorable Speaker, most students, especially from ASAL areas, most of them are affected by malnutrition. But if we have this program in our schools, this malnutrition will be eradicated. Prevent corruption and save this money that we are using for other things. We can provide 2 meals for our children, in meals and take away ratio. And by doing so, Honorable Speaker, this country, we shall have energetic students, we shall have able-bodied students who can actually advance in their studies. Honorable Speaker, members have spoken the benefits of this program, and I don't want to emphasize so much, but Honorable Speaker, allow me just to highlight few. One of it, Honorable Speaker, this program will elevate the health, the free secondary school. And we are saying 100% must go to, from primary school to secondary school. And Honorable Speaker, I want us to encourage that we should also have take-away ratio home. Because, Honorable Speaker, this child, when he eats in school, when he goes home, he sleeps angry. Honorable Speaker, I wish the member who came with this motion can adjust and put 2 meals per day. Thank you. I support it.
The Honorable Lodefe.
Yes, sir.
You want 2 meals?
Yes.
Very well. The Honorable Asheli, Deputy Leader of Majority.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, allow me to thank Honorable Vincent Kemosi Mukaka for this motion. And quickly, Mr. Speaker, I've been listening to members here, and I had quite a number of definitions of this motion of school feeding program. and the one that fits in most is the one that I got from the World Bank. And allow me to quote that this program targets social safety acts that provide both educational and health benefits to the most vulnerable children, thereby increasing enrollment rates, reducing absenteeism, and improving on food security at the household level. End of quote. Mr. Speaker, this definition summarizes everything that we are talking about. And when we talk about enrollment rates, Mr. Speaker, when there is a school feeding program, even parents or caretakers who may think that the children will stay at home, they will encourage those children to go to school so that they can have something to eat. Mr. Speaker, the issue of absenteeism, reducing absenteeism, there is no, from the media, you will hear of this constituency issuing out bursaries to secondary schools. I have also done the same in my constituency. And actually, the people we are giving bursaries to for secondary schools are mature school-going children, or students for that matter. Now the question comes, because the bursaries we are giving, given that the government is meeting the costs of tuition and all other requirements of a student to go to school, the money that we are giving as bursary is actually meeting, providing school feeding program. Therefore,
the Honorable Koyo, the Honorable Koyo, the Honorable Koyo, the Honorable Koyo, kindly make your way a little bit, yes, in an orderly way into the chamber. We know you have come, but make your way in a way that you allow the progress of the House to proceed. Very well.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hope you'll add me one more minute. Mr. Speaker, I was just saying that as members of parliament who are responsible of these school-going children, we need to ask ourselves whether the money we are given under CDF program will be used to feed the slightly mature school-going children, those who are in secondary schools, or the most vulnerable children who are young and small going to primary. Mr. Speaker, I was going to request that as we pursue this motion, as we pursue the government to provide for food in school, we also need to consider whether in our own small way we will be feeding those students in secondary schools and or those learners who are in primary schools. For me, I strongly believe that even if we have limited resources, we need to start with the most vulnerable who are in primary so that we move to those ones who are in secondary. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, I support.
You support, it's very well.
And one of the issues that government would have to take the views and the perspectives of the members very, very seriously on this, if we want to improve education in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, this issue of feeding program needs to be taken in a wider perspective. It is not just the national government. We should have a framework where the national government work with the county governments so that the feeding program is extended. The agriculture, for example, is a devolved function. Where this is an area of business where the local people actually get the food that is eaten or fed to the pupils could actually be coming from the families allowed the school so that they get business, but also then our pupils are kept in school. So there needs to be a very clear collaboration framework between the national government, the county government, the donors. I noticed that the World Food Program has been supporting this program, but they exited at some point. The World Bank is coming in this is an area that we could have a multi-sectoral, as just like the mover have just indicated, a multi-sectoral approach, so that we have all these facets and agencies and governments, levels of government working together to feed our pupils in school. So, Mr. Speaker, there was also the issue of milk program. I have noticed that some counties, actually, some governors, some counties have actually embarked on a milk program. Our neighboring county, Nyandaro, I hear they have a feeding program, and a few other counties. This is still part of this, the feeding, so that then we can have our kids in school and our kids can study. Mr. Speaker, education is the only opportunity we have to equalize communities and to equalize societies. And so this feeding program, we need to emphasize on it, we need to support it, and it needs to be spread across the entire country, not only in some parts, so that all our kids benefit from this feeding program. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you and I support.
The Honorable Mwambire Ngumbao.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity
the
to...
Honorable Mwambire, before you proceed, I think the Honorable Baya, member for Kilifi North, you have a point.
Speaker, for us to retain our children in school, to make sure that they have maximum concentration, we really have to take care of their stomachs, Mr. Speaker. As the case is, Mr. Speaker, now, it is very important that Kenyans raise to the real spirit of the Constitution, and that is equity and equality. Mr. Speaker, as it is now, we are aware that there is a school feeding program going on in some schools, but Mr. Speaker, that is discrimination.
I have to donate the part of my minutes, Mr. Speaker. One is Honorable Masara. Honorable Gertrude. We have Honorable the Whip, and then Honorable Mauritania.
Yes, you can
and
only,
finally,
order member, you can only do 4 because you have 1 minute to conclude.
Yes.
So can the first one, 1 minute each. Who is the first one?
Thank you, Honorable, for donating 1 minute for me. Mr. Speaker, sir, thank you so much. Members, I rise to support this motion because it is a very important motion for the children of Kenya. Some of us are today in Parliament because we got feeding from the schools during Moi time. I want to support this motion because, Mr. Speaker, we have families back at home who cannot afford 3 meals in a day. And if this program is rolled out in public school, I'm telling you the enrollment will increase and the Kenyan children will get the universal primary education. This program does not need even
sets watching World Cup by grabbers, or they have been utilized for other things. It is now necessary, Mr. Speaker, for us to devolve sports activities and projects to our various regions, especially at the constituency level. I know that the government, under the Vision 2030, came up with a National Sports Academy at Kasarani, and they are putting some money in that project. But it is important that we change the strategy, Mr. Speaker, because the government strategy was top-down strategy, where you establish the National Academy, and then gradually you start the regional academies. I think for sports, it works well if it approach, because talents are in the villages. So we need to set up academies in this country. People like Kadenge, who are dying poor, and they should not die poor. If you go to a country like Brazil, Pele is the ambassador #1. And when our youth see that we value our sportsmen, they will try and do better, and sports will be better in this country.
Able to create 300 well-equipped, properly staffed sports academies in the entire country. That's the money we just lost, if that is anything to go by.
Meeting with the ones, my youth in Kakamega County, and also the ones in Nyandarua, and the rest. This will bring national cohesion in the country, and also we shall exchange views, which might even help us in development. And also, we know that an idle mind is the devil's workshop. We want our youth to be engaged in sports so that they can be less idle. You know, when they are idle, we find problems of early pregnancy, we find gender-based violence and other problems. So, with the development of these academies, Mr. Speaker, I think we shall have a better Kenya. Thank you.
Honorable Wabugu Munene.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving this opportunity to add my voice and support this very crucial and important motion. I would want, first of all, to thank the mover, Godfrey Osotsi, for coming up with this motion, which actually is long overdue. And we all know for a fact that sports are very important, not just in the well-being of a human being, but also to bring cohesion within the people who compete among themselves. Mr. Speaker, about job creation, we are very much aware that Kenya, most of our youth have no jobs. These youth come to offices, nagging us, pleading us, tafadhali, or please help me to get a job. Yet, some of them, they have talents, but they have nowhere to be able to, they have nowhere where they can go and have those talents exploited, and maybe get an opportunity to go somewhere, maybe abroad, and earn some money. Mr. Speaker, sports, we know they are very popular. Apart from the people who are participating, or the youth who are participating, we also have fans. People, when the sports are going on, they come and participate and watch, and in the process, they are not idle. In the process, they also don't engage themselves in activities which are not productive, especially alcoholism. Mr. Speaker, we have to appreciate that we don't live in isolation. And other countries are moving forward and making sure that they are growing their sports. They are growing their sports and talents. We also need to join those nations so that we can also grow our sports, grow our talents, and in the process have Kenya recognized worldwide, like what happened during our athletes. They have made Kenya to be known world over. That is a lot of champions. We can also maybe be able to grow other sports like football, volleyball, and all type of football, all types of sports through enhancing and ensuring that in every area, in every part of our country, we have well-established sports academies. With that, Mr. Speaker, I support. Thank you.
Honorable Jaldesa Dida.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this very important motion. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to congratulate the mover of this motion for bringing this motion at a very timely and important period in the lives of our young people in this country. Mr. Chairman, of course, I wish to support by saying that sport is viewed as a universal language that brings people together no matter their origin, background, religious belief, or economic status. Mr. Speaker, sir, Sport Academy challenges students not only to develop their athletic skills, but also to develop their personal identity, self-esteem, and character and team spirit. Mr. Speaker, sir, the benefit of Sport Academy cannot be overemphasized. We have so many youths who have talents, but unfortunately, they have nowhere to nurture their talents. Just to give you an example, Mr. Speaker, I represent the good county of Isiolo. And only in Isiolo, in the last 3 or 4 so years, we have had youths who have joined very serious leagues outside the countries. We even have a young boy who was training to join Liverpool. It may not sound true, but it is the truth, Mr. Speaker, sir. So given those opportunities, I am sure we will have so many. Mr. Speaker, sir, we so happen to be the cousins from Ethiopians. And we have so many athletes who can run. But unfortunately, they have not been given opportunity.
Order. What is it, Honorable Wetangula Wanyonyi? You seem to have pressed an intervention.
Mr. Speaker, I think that's the only way I can catch your eye, because today I was here, the first person in the House, and then when the session started, I was not anywhere. That's why I've just pressed it so that you can see that I'm here.
Order, Honorable Wanyonyi. If all of you press like that, you will catch the speaker's eye at the appropriate time. Honorable Wanyonyi. Yes, Honorable Leader.
Obesity and the lifestyle diseases due to lack of physical activities, especially amongst the young generation. With this establishment of Sport Academy, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, it will improve. Secondly, it has so many social benefits. Development of sport academies will greatly help in fighting social problems like early pregnancy, radicalization, which unfortunately is very rampant in counties like mine. We have so many youths who have crossed over to Somalia. We have so many who have been rotting in jails because of being suspected to engage in radicalization activity. Also, Mr. Speaker, it has an important benefit of nurturing of talents, which has been mentioned. I don't want to overemphasize. It has great economic benefit, creation of employment, especially if we create these academies in the counties. It will employ the local youths. Therefore, it will help us in addressing these issues of lack of employment for the youth. Mr. Speaker, sir, again, it helps in creating careers, like I've just mentioned. It also improves diversities, because these youths will be, playing with each other, will be having an exchange program where my county can go to Machakos, can go to Kisumu, and play with. Therefore, it will. My only concern is when the mover said the money should be taken from the social safety net. The government has ample enough resources to ensure that this program is supported without taking from the elderly. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I support.
Honorable Bidi, member for Masinga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this time. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this motion by Honorable Ososi. Indeed, this is a very important motion that we need all of us to support. The young people in this country needs to nurture their talents, and especially now there is no much employment, that they can be able to earn their living by some talents, by sporting and so forth.
Therefore, by developing them is by establishing these academies in every constituency, so that the dropouts from the schools doing a lot of nothing. But if there was an academy somewhere whereby they can go and train by themselves and have even a trainer in that academy, you'll find that they are busy with whatever they want to nurture. And therefore, that's why I'm rising to support this motion, because it will help my people in my constituency, and even the voters that are coming up as young people will have something to do, because we have found that in areas like Eldoret and E10, a place whereby you could not have known even E10, a rural place down there in the valley, is all over in the papers, because the young people there are talented, they are training, and there is money circulating in that area, because they are able to run and earn a living. And therefore, the economy there is developing more than other places whereby there are no sporting activities. And therefore, we need the whole country to be the same, so that we can nurture so many of these young people. Therefore, I urge the members, let us support this motion by Honorable Sosi, so that we can even allocate funds to be able to build these academies, and we will be able to take out the young people that are idle, eating, and even some chewing some, what do you call the mera, in those markets, idling from one shop to another, taking tea from this kiosk to this other kiosk. They will be able to be busy in those areas practicing. Therefore, with those real remarks, I support. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Shall we now have Honorable Nagabo Janet? Very well. She left her card on. Honorable Obo Mohammed.
Asante Bwana Spika kunipatia hii nafasi kuchangia. Mimi naunga mkono na huyu mbunge amefikiria sana. Hili ni jambo la maana kwa sababu youth, vijana wetu wanarandaranda mitaani, na sehemu kama Lamu na kaunti zingine pia, kila kaunti na matatizo yake, lakini Lamu jambo hili litasaidia pakubwa. Mwanzo kabisa tutaona mabadiliko katika magereza, watapungua sana youth kwenye magereza. Angalau watakuwa wamepata jambo la kufanya. Lamu ni tofauti na kaunti zingine. Manake Lamu kuna upande wa visiwa na upande wa ardhi huku, na matatizo yao ni tofauti. Utaona kama Fatherwood ambayo ni kisiwa kikubwa, kuna shida youth paka imetokezea kwamba wanapigana wao kwa wao au kwa kijiji au kwa sababu ya kisasi, kwa sababu hawana kazi za kufanya, ndio wanaingilia mambo kama haya. Ikiwekwa hii kila constituency ipate hii shule, itawasaidia pakubwa, na ni youth ambao wapenda kazi, itawaleta kuwa na umoja, utaleta uyano. Pia ikiwa hizi zitahusisha kaunti nzima, itabidi wao mfano upande wa Lamu Mashariki na upande wa Lamu Magharibi kuwaleta pamoja ili kuleta uyano. Pia kuna mambo kama yale watu kama ndugu yangu hapa amesema, women rep wa Isiolo, kwamba kuna kaunti ambazo zina matatizo ya youth kuvuka kwenda Somalia. Hiyo itapunguza pakubwa. Tumeona kuna matatizo paka kina mama wanalia, hawajui saa nyingine, kwa sababu kina mama manyumbani hawaambiwi. Kuna wale hawaambiwi, hawajui ukweli. Ukiona mtoto wako pengine amefuatwa na polisi nini, unaona na haya matatizo naona yataisha ikiwekwa kama hizi youth wata engage katika mambo ya michezo. ile pia kuona ile wivu ya watu kukaa pamoja. Kuna wengine pengine wamepata zaidi, wengine hawajapata zaidi. Kuna wivu huchangia mpaka kukawa na matlea. Likija tu isiwe kama Lamu, pengine uanze kwingine, Lamu ije wakati wa mwisho, manake sana sisi watu wa Lamu usauliwa, mambo yanaanza huko kisha ikaje karushwa hivyo. So ianze kwa pamoja. Kaunti zote, hii ni kitu mzuri na itatusaidia sote, matatizo mengi yatapunguzika, especially upande wa kina mama. Tunao hii kipato kidogo ya upande ya kusaidia youth. Tuko tayari kujitolelea na kushirikiana na jambo kama hili ili tusaidie youth wetu. Upande wa michezo inaleta ajira kama wenzangu walivyotangulia kusema, inaleta upendo, inasaidia pia mambo ya exercise. Unajua kuna magonjwa mingi yanakuja kama watu wengine hawafanye exercise au wamezoea kufanya wakiwa skuli za toje.
What is it about Kiti Chonga?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What is out of order?
The point of order is, I wanted to ask the honorable member who is on the floor whether it's actually acceptable to be mixing two languages, Kiswahili and English, when contributing to such a very important motion.
Well, honorable member, I think Honorable Mohammed should know you can only choose your language and stick to that one language. You can't mix.
Hapo inasema ni kupotelewa kwa ulimi. Nimekosea. Asante kwa kunirekebisha. Nimechagua Kiswahili. Nataka muelewe kwamba msinitoe mbali na hii. Huu ni mswada mzuri na ni vizuri tuchangie, tuangalie hili, tusipelekane kwa hayo mambo mengine madogo madogo. Kwa hivyo ni jambo la maana na tunaomba litiliwe mkazo. Youth wetu, vijana wetu wanatuangalia na wanataka sana, na wengine hata wameanza kutuma kwa simu, wametuma message kwa simu kwamba changieni hii, tunangojea ilikuwa inafaa ifanye kabla. Sahihi tulikuwa natarajia iwe iko mashinani, lakini sasa mmeanza sasa, ng'ang'aneni ije mashinani, wanangojea kwa hamu sana youth wetu. Asante Bwana Speaker.
Honorable members, the interest is there, and we shall progressively give members the opportunity to speak to this important motion. Honorable Amisi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this motion, and in fact, the Honorable Ososi, the mover, might have had a glimpse of my manifestos when I was campaigning, because this is some of my agenda for the people of Saboti, to establish sports academies. And in line with that, Honorable Speaker, allow me to congratulate our team from Africa, Senegal, for performing Stanley very well yesterday against Poland. And you realize some of the reason where they train the young, talents at a very early age. And it helps the people to realize their talents at a very early stage. And you've seen the results at the World Cup. And I believe if we establish sports academies in all our constituencies, and especially the pilot one should start in my constituency, because it's a cosmopolitan constituency. And it has all, in a cosmopolitan arrangement of, we have all a nature of talents. We have the athletes, we have the footballers, and all, whenever we go home, I know most of us here, the honorable members, are always caught in this situation whereby the young people are asking to be supported in their sporting activity, tournament. Myself, I've spent so much, many years in doing youth projects, and youth tournaments, sports tournaments are always one of them. And I believe this is going to be also a relief to us. And we are not just talking about sports academies, we are talking about well-equipped sports academies. And the results of betting is always, you know, in some cases, even death, because people bet and when they lose, they start fighting. So it's paramount that we put this youth under some controlled, you know, talent development mechanism. And the sports academy is the crucial. In fact, it is something that should have been, you know, included in the last budget. But these things must be supported budget-wise, so that this money we waste in, I don't know, youth Uwezo Fund and the rest. Some youth are not really entrepreneurs. Some are just very good in some areas of, and they just need to support their talents. So as one of the young people in this country, I really urge members to support and pass this motion. And we also urge the government or the, you know, the implementation committee to quickly, you know, make sure that they follow up so that it is well, you know, it's operationalized. And our youth, our very many idle young people in this country will get somewhere to start exercising their talent. So, Speaker, I really want to support this dearly as a member of parliament who has really supported youth activities in my constituency and especially in promoting sports. And I urge my colleagues to support this to help our young people develop their talents. Not really sports alone. We also should start thinking about other talents in terms of music and arts. Also part of the talent that young people exhibit down there. Thank you, Speaker, for those few remarks. I beg to support.
Honorable Wetangula Wanyonyi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you see earlier on when I was putting an intervention, it was just because yesterday I stayed here the whole afternoon and the Speaker came in and was picking our friends to speak. I'm not going to fear to say that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to support this motion, and I want to say that, Mr. Speaker, I remember in 1998, when France won the World Cup, the whole of the French team, Mr. Speaker, had been an academy, and they trained together, and they were picked from that academy, and when they came, Mr. Speaker, they demonstrated how investment, a good investment, can create good results. Mr. Speaker, Kenya is a sporting nation, and we are not doing enough to nurture our talent, our young people, and we have so much talent in this country, Mr. Speaker. Starting from down the village, coming upwards. I realize these days even the football teams, they only look in the urban areas to look for players. When we have raw talent, Mr. Speaker, down in the village. And most of these, even West African countries, Mr. Speaker, they have academies for different ages. You'll find the under 10, the under 14, under 17, under 20, going up like that. Before a player graduates to go to a senior team, he has passed through so many stages. And that's how, Mr. Speaker, you find that some of these countries are doing very well. A country like Iceland, Mr. Speaker, has a population of 300,000 people, and it has a team at the World Cup, competing among the best in the world. That shows how important some of this investment can bring. And this also is a game changer because, Mr. Speaker, it will bring our young people to be more productive, to use their talent, and avoid some of these activities that lead them to either illicit, Mr. Speaker, illicit activities. Those who are involved in funny things, they will be busy with this thing, Mr. Speaker. The young people who will come and demonstrate their gifts that God has given them. And it is for us as a country, those of us who are leaders, the government, for our youth, and create something for them that can occupy them in a positive creation. Mr. Speaker, because of time, I want to thank you very much for giving me a chance to speak. Thank you.
Guna.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me this opportunity to reinforce what my friends have already said. Mr. Speaker, sir, I take this opportunity to thank my friend, Honorable Sots, for moving this important motion. I'm aware, Mr. Speaker, you are aware I'm a member of Sports, Culture and Tourism Committee, and probably half of my votes came because I sponsor sports in my constituency. Mr. Speaker, sir, we cannot actually underrate the importance of sport.
Paula Radcliffe from Europe comes to Eton for training, paying a lot of money in the small cottages that have been put up in that Kipchoge Keino Sports Academy. And we are looking at Kenya having very good weather, high altitude training for athletes. You will find people coming from all over the world. Look at long time Kenya. We had a lot of boxers who were winning medals in the Olympics. Why? Because we had social halls. In Shaurimo here, we had a social hall. We had a social hall in every estate. If we put money in these sports academies, we'll have a lot of boxers going to Olympics and earning a lot of money, like my friend has said, the likes of Mayweather, who are earning billions, Mr. Moneybag. So, from the onset, Mr. Osotsi, I think you should push this one to the sports committee and we include it in the next budget as up, and we have a collaboration. Like we are saying, we have ICT hubs whereby the constituency and the government have collaboration so that they can run well. We should put it directly to the budget in the next financial year. We have monies allocated for the sports academies, and we move on. And I'm sure our country will change forever. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Should we now have Honorable Kamene Joyce?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me this opportunity. I'd want to support this motion fully. And thank you, Mr. Honorable Otsotsi, for this motion. A healthy person needs to exercise periodically. Sports, for sure, do make great and positive economist impact in the society. Football in Europe, North America, Latin America, and some parts of Africa is highly paying sport. Let's have these academies established and then encourage our young men and women to immerse themselves in the sport for their own benefits and that of our nation. Our sports too is a rich source of employment. It too spurs the youth into action rather than remaining idle. And also, it will put the youth into action. It is rather depressing, Mr. Speaker, to note that the partial allocation to
them. And when I take management as also a career, there are so many schools which have been set aside to train the management students. When we talk about people who are training to be teachers, there are many universities and even tertiary colleges which have been set aside to train our teachers. And I want to contribute and say that sports has proved to be a stronger career than any other career in this country. Because we measure the strength of careers by what we get out of it. So sports has proven to get more income than any other career. So I ask myself, why not? So it's a brilliant move for this country to set up, training centers in every constituency. When I was training, or when I was in my life in school, I used to be a bright student, but above all, I used to be a great footballer. I used to be a striker. All right? But teachers kept on telling me that you need to become
an engineer, you need to become a doctor. So they encouraged me so much to become, you know, to take academics more seriously than sports. If I want somebody to train me, to guide me through the way of footballing, today I could be a great man like this African great footballer by name Didier Drogba, who is the training centers set, and above all, we should come up with proper legislation so that even the money set to support those centers can be well managed. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next is Honorable Amin Kasim.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this important motion in regards to creation of sport academies in various constituencies in the country. And before I continue to support that, first, I would like to put condolences to the people who have fallen, for the number of young armed officers who have fallen on the hands of youth who are radicalized through Al-Shabaab. In my county, the day before yesterday, we have lost six members of my community that are detrimental to the society, could not have been there. So indeed, I pass my condolences to those families, and I feel saddened as a man who is representing the people of that region. And this is the second incident that have happened so far in my term as a member of parliament. So I'm really indeed, and few other and drug abuses could have gone to this academia. So we feel the creation of academics, sport academies in various constituencies will be able to engage youth, their talents, their energy into this so that they can be able to get an employment for that further and be able to get an income for themselves. And one thing we have realized is that what we are getting so far through the Constituent Development Fund and even the allocation is in the right direction. I urge the government to support in terms of funding. One thing we have realized in Jubilee, in the manifesto, which actually Uhuru said we are going to create 5 stadiums in 5 constituencies, which he has never done. We consider that as an abuse to and not fulfilling the pledge which he has done. Similar funding should be decentralized, should go to various constituencies. The money that may be meant for those 5 stadiums which have not been fulfilled should go to the constituencies to develop sport academy which can be useful to the society and for our aspiring youth. Thank you.
Very well, honorable members, it is 1 p.m. This motion still, from the look of things, tremendous interest from the members. Very important motion. Honorable Sorone, honorable members, we can't, the House must rise at 1. But the good news is that we have a balance of 48 minutes for this particular motion. And so it will not be concluded now. And the House business, of course, will slot it for 20th June 2018 at 2:30.